Alrighty, now we're starting our third lesson of this series and the last of the series entitled Embracing Your Season in Life, Four Spiritual Seasons of Life. And we talked last week two of our spiritual seasons, wilderness and warring. And wilderness was about the time of our lives in which we have felt in a wilderness, feeling unsure of the future and even confusion and possibly isolation of exactly where we belong in life. And when we, like Elijah, are feeling alone and maybe not hearing God's voice, but it is here where we find ourselves in this wilderness by looking deeply within our hearts and our faith and our hope and our beliefs. And there we find the very roots of who we are, getting back to the reality of who we are. And that's in the wilderness, when we find that we're not distracted by a lot of other things, but we have to really focus on ourselves of who we are. And then we have the warring season. As described when I talked about it last week, is when we feel like there's an army against us, and temptations and pain and frustrations and failures just looming all around us, it seems like, or one after the other coming at us. And we just feel like we're at battle all the time. It's when we are a soldier for whom God is using to battle against the pain and the hopelessness of life and the despair that we feel and sometimes other people feel too. It is there when we pull all of our abilities, all of our faith, and all of our hope together and use it for the glory of God to battle against the evil that's around us, that comes out and within us as well as around us, whatever. It's also time that we look really deep within ourselves and we use that courage and tenacity to fight against enemies that we have come against us. And so there we're at battle, we're at warring. We're now going to discuss the winning season, when things seem to be going our way and life's obstacles are conquered and at least under control, and it's called the season of blessings, the winning season. You remember all those cross-country trips you used to make and with your parents? Or when you were a parent, if you were blessed like that, or a grandparent? It seemed like we would never get there when we were sitting in that back seat of our car when we were growing up with our parents driving us. And I am still like that when I was a kid, I think. And my kids did the same thing by constantly asking when we were going somewhere, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Why is it taking so long? I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, and the list goes on. You remember those times? Well, I would say to my kids, why don't you go to sleep and take a nap? And when you wake up, we'll almost be there. And of course, it may be a 10-hour drive or even a 2-day drive, but they'll take a nap and we have at least 1 hour of calmness and quietness in the car. And when they woke up, I'd say, well, we're getting there really quick now. And then we have to start all over again. It worked every time, at least for an hour anyway. But when the winds of change blow, remember, says Jane Logan, I got this quote from her, when the winds of change blow, remember, sometimes what appears dead is simply preparing for a new season. One of the old hymns that we sing right there in your class and in churches, wherever you attend, is called Count Your Blessings. I grew up on this old gospel song. And let me kind of read you the first lyric just to remind you what it says. When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you're discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. And then we go into the refrain. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings and see what God has done. And then it goes in that little extra, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. And you do the last refrain. I love that song, but listen to the message of that. James 5:13 says this, is anyone among you in trouble? Well, let them pray. Is anyone happy? Let them sing songs of praise. And count your blessings as part of that. Within our hearts, within our lives, we have so much riches in our life. And so many things have gone well for us. We get plenty of advice for coping life's negative events, but can we deliberately enhance the impact of the good things in our lives? But what about dealing with the good ones? Reaching the top of a magnificent waterfall, or hearing a child's laugh, or listening to a favorite song that brings memories. Those things that come into mind. It's been presumed that when good things happen, people naturally feel joy about it. There is a want to savor it. It's like eating a piece of delicious steak or the first bite of some fried chicken. We slowly chew that savory and the taste that would come out of that, trying not to gobble it down too quick because we're there to enjoy it. It just tastes so good. Now, there are 10 ways I wanted to go under this winning season of blessings that will help us to develop savoring the goodness as a skill in our life, that we just don't take it for granted so much. So be able to really enjoy and have praise and blessings in our life, we've got to be able to be intentional about it, to say these blessings are from God, and I need to celebrate that. Okay, let me give you those 10 things that will help us to savor the goodness. Number 1, you share your good things and those feelings with others. What's the first thing you do when you hear good news about yourself or you have good news? You want to tell someone, and that's the people are important to you, like a spouse or a friend or even a neighbor that you enjoy talking with across the fence. You want to share it with somebody. You tell another person when you're feeling particularly appreciative of a certain moment, whether it be a laugh with a friend or a beautiful scene of nature. Studies about the way people react to positive events have shown that those who share positive feelings with others are happier overall than those who don't. Tell someone about the blessing. Savoring is the glue that bonds people together, and it's essential to prolong the relationships is by sharing. People who savor together stay together. Number 2, about ways to develop that savoring goodness in our life is take a mental photograph. Now you pause for a moment and you consciously be aware of things that you want to remember later, such as the sound of a loved one's chuckle that comes to mind, or a touching moment between two family members. In one study, scientifically, participants who took a 20-minute walk every day for 1 week and consciously looked for good things in that walk reported feeling happier than those who were instructed to look for bad things. It's all about saying to yourself, this is great. I'm loving it. And then you want to share it with someone, of course. Number 3, congratulate yourself. Now, don't hesitate to pat yourself on the back and take credit for your hard work. Research shows that people who revel in their successes are more likely to enjoy the outcome that they have achieved. This is giving ourselves credit for goodness that we've done and being our best cheerleader. It is not bragging. It is just taking recognition that God has given me this, and I achieved it by my hard work and my faith in Him. Number 4, sharpen your sensory perceptions. Getting in touch with your senses, or taking the time to use them more consciously, flexes that savoring muscle in your life. With all the distractions we face today, this is particularly difficult. In one study, people who focused on the chocolate they were eating reported feeling more pleasure than others who were distracted while eating that chocolate. Savor it. Touch it. Smell it. Taste it. About life, what's given to you. Number 5, shout it from the rooftops. Laugh out loud. Jump up and down and shout for joy when people say something good happens to you. Of course, you got to be careful about that. At our age, sometimes they might get a little crick in your neck. But people who outwardly express their good feelings tend to feel extra good because it provides that mind with evidence that something positive has occurred and your whole body is reacting to it. You can't help laughing and smiling. You can't help waving your arm, whatever it may be, but celebrate it. Shout it from the rooftops. Number 6, compare the outcome to something much worse. You boost your positive feelings by reminding yourself how bad things could be. Comparing good experiences with unpleasant ones gives us a reference point and makes our current situation seem even better. So we got to remind ourselves that, yes, I have so much. Oh, I've got these problems over here, but what I've got here, out, this is that to way beyond that's not even important anymore. So we got to be able to compare our outcomes to something that's worse, maybe. Number 7, get absorbed in the moment. Try to turn off your conscious thoughts and absorb the positive feelings during a special moment, such as taking in a beautiful sunset or a rainbow. Just out here on our back porch just a few days ago, we had a rainstorm, and there was that beautiful rainbow. We get quite a few here. And my wife and I just stood there and looked at the rainbow and marveled at it. It was a special moment. We got absorbed in what that beauty was in nature. Now, studies of positive experiences indicate that people most enjoy themselves when they are totally absorbed in a task or moment, losing their time of space because they're so focused in it. This is called by psychologists a flow. So your whole being was in it. It could be a worship moment. It could be a prayer moment. It could be an observation of something beautiful. It could be a bonding moment with somebody special. But whatever it may be, pause and reflect on the positive experience on the spot of what you're experiencing in that moment. Number 8, count your blessings and give thanks. Back to our song. Tell your loved ones how lucky you feel to have them, or even take extra time to appreciate your food before a meal. Take those moments of blessings and thankfulness. Once again, they say that saying thank you out loud makes us happier by affirming our positive feelings. Think of the new blessing for which you've never even given thanks each night in bed. Just stop and pause and say, Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this, and this. Recalling that experience through thanks will help you savor it. Number 9, avoid that killjoy thinking. Now, avoid negative thinking is just as important as thinking positively. After a rough day, try not to focus on the negative things that occurred. Once again, they have studied it that shows that the more negative thoughts that people have after a personal achievement, the less likely they are to enjoy it. So take that time to do that. And number 10, learning how to savor it is a skill. Remind yourself of how quickly time flies. Remember that good moment passes quickly, and tell yourself to consciously relish the moment because you don't know when the next moment will come. Realizing how short-lived certain moments are and wishing that they could last longer encourages us to enjoy them while they're happening. In fact, savoring can be used to connect you to the past or future. And this can be done by remembering the good times and recreating them, or imagining a time in the future when you will look back with good memories on them. Those are the 10 things to learn how to savor in our blessing and winning season. Let me conclude this one season with this story. There was a gardener named Sarah who loved tending to her garden. She spent hours planting flowers and vegetables and herbs and nurturing every plant. Her garden flourished, producing vibrant blossoms and a bountiful harvest of vegetables. One day, a friend visited Sarah and admired her beautiful garden. "You are so lucky to have such a wonderful garden," the friend said. "I wish I had a green thumb." Sarah smiled and replied, "It's not just luck. I believe this garden is a blessing from God. Every day I thank Him for the sunshine, the rain, and the fertile soil. I enjoy every moment I spend here, and I see God's hand in every blossom and every fruit that comes from the ground." Her friend looked puzzled and asked, "But Don't you ever get tired of the hard work? Isn't it exhausting? Sarah shook her head. Of course it can be tiring, but I find joy in the process. Each plant is a reminder of God's blessings and the beauty he has placed in my life. By appreciating and enjoying those blessings, I feel closer to him and more grateful for everything that I have. Isn't that a wonderful story? And the story reminds us that recognizing and enjoying God's blessings in our daily lives can bring us closer to him and fill our hearts with gratitude and joy. It's about finding beauty and purpose in the simple things of life and appreciating the gifts that we have been given. The winning season, the blessing season. Now let's look at our final season. Resting and healing in the waiting season. Matthew 11:28 says this, "Come to me, all you who have labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest," Jesus said. God wants you to know that you can rest and labor with him. Both are of value. Have you ever seen that Andy Griffith show? I love Andy Griffith. I know maybe you have seen a lot of his shows too, but it's called Man in a Hurry. It's one of his classics. It's all about this businessman whose car broke down right outside of Mayberry on a Sunday. And so he walks into town and he's trying to get somebody to help fix his car. And it was a Sunday, like I said, everyone was going to church or taking the day off to rest, where it may be. It was very frustrating for him because he had to get back into the next town where his destiny was because he had important meetings to go to. And because he had to meet deadlines. He finally gets the message about priorities. After a countless the whole show was talking about his frustrations of people saying, well, you can do it Monday, stay over another day. I got to go. No, it's no big deal. This is Sunday. We're resting, da-da-da. He finally, on the porch of Andy Griffith, calmed down and started thinking about his youth and the real purpose of life and decided to stay overnight to further capture those feelings. Now, most of us would agree that children don't want to wait for most anything for very long. The last thing kids want to hear from an adult is to say, not now. It can prompt anger, frustration, even hopelessness. And this dis-ease, little hyphenated word there, of waiting follows most of us into our adult years. We may not respond with the same emotional outburst as children, but most of us still hate to wait to get what we want when we want it. We get very impatient. Such is our dilemma as Christians. While society makes every attempt to make our life easier and faster, God works in very different timetable. In his mind, nothing is wrong with waiting. In fact, waiting can actually be a positive thing that he often uses to make us more like his son. Something actually happened while nothing is happening. God uses waiting to change us. Remember the story of Adam and Eve? It's a story of rebellion against God. Once they believed that God didn't have their best interests at heart, they decided to go ahead without God and do what they wanted. They became, in effect, their own God. Too often, that is exactly what we do today. When God tells us to wait, we don't trust him, but go ahead and find ways to accomplish what we want to happen. And if you're like me, you get into all kind of trouble with that. This tendency to push God to the side goes against his plan for us. It creates distance in our relationship with him. It causes us to get into trouble, and it brings pain. What good is it to gain the whole world, it says in Mark, whatever it is that we think we want, and forfeit our soul's intimacy with God? God wants us to learn how to follow him and put down our demanding selves to calm that screaming child in us of saying, now, I want it now. And one way he helps us to do this is to say, wait, it's not the right time. I can see the future. I know what's going to happen. I know when is the best time and how it should happen. And we've got to trust it. That miserable, uncomfortable, sometimes painful silence is one of God's most powerful tools to set us free. But we have to trust it. And if we're willing, that is. Or by God's grace, we can choose to wait as he intends. Waiting for the Lord is opposite of running ahead of the Lord. And it's the opposite of bailing out on the Lord. It's staying at your appointed place while he says stay. Or it's going at his appointed pace while he says go. It's not impetuous, and it's not despairing. It's not robotic. It's not that we don't have a will. He wants us to trust him. So we have the choice then to take a deep breath, release our clenched fist, and let God be God. And we're invited to continue hoping for his greatness. Pray for God to work within you. And certainly one of these options will bring us joy. As we seek to accept and rejoice in God's handling of our lives, including his timing, we can ask God to work in us two main things so that our waiting is not in vain and humility and trust comes in. And even during this long road of silence, God cares deeply for us. We can be like David, remind ourselves, like it says in Psalms 27, wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. It reminds me of a great story, one of my favorites, about a very religious man who finds himself trapped in his house during a flood. As the waters rise, he prays fervently to God to save him. A neighbor comes by in a canoe and offers to take him to safety, but the man says, no, thank you. I have faith that God's going to save me. As the waters start to rise even further, a rescue team arrives in a motorboat and urges him to get in. Again, he says, no, I insist that God's going to save me. Finally, as the floodwaters reach the roof, a helicopter arrives to airlift him to safety, but he still refuses, confident that God will intervene. And then the man drowns. When he meets God in heaven, he says, why didn't you save me? Of course, God says, I sent you a canoe, a motorboat, and a helicopter. What more do you expect? I love that. It's an old story. I know you've heard it before, but it's so funny about waiting for the Lord and waiting for the right timing during these times of waiting, the stillness moment. You know, possibly, if we just shut our mouth and open our ears during this waiting period, we can faintly hear the voice of God instructing us, calming us, reassuring us in our life. Well, those are our 4 seasons about life and about the transitions we go through and how they impact our mindset and our actions. The amount of time it takes to move through each season is a reflection of your state of mind. Furthermore, the seasons are about the process of transition from one set of circumstances to the next, allowing for opportunities for us to learn, evolve, and eventually reap the rewards of a well-lived life if we just go through those with our eyes on the Lord. I am sure that we could think of other spiritual seasons of life that we would call something different if it all worked at it. But these are the 4 major ones that come to mind. And truth is, they can overlap too, can't they? We can be in a winning season and doing the right thing at the right time in the right way and still have warfare come against us. These seasons don't necessarily alternate. It could be a blend. But knowing when we're in the wilderness of training and not seeing it as a punishment, or knowing it's time to rest and God wants that for us, is so important. Being astute about the times and seasons brings us peace that God regulates this world. And our hope in him, our trust in him, our season, our life, as we transition through these different seasons of spirituality, of growing in God, that he is walking by our side and is always teaching us loving us and helping us know more about ourselves, about our lack of faith that we need to get strengthened, about our hopes that we need to get stronger, about our love for God and our love for fellow man around us. And our different seasons carry us on toward this mature faith, which is a true success in our lives. Well, I hope you've enjoyed these last 3 lessons about the 4 seasons. And I want you to think about those. And as you go through those seasons in your life, know that God is with you always. Amen.